This is Main Street with Gary Allen. Now, here's Gary.
And hello, everybody. Gary Allen with you here on Main Street. I hope you've had a wonderful time since the last time we were together. We have a very interesting show for you today. It's about veterans and women in the military, men in the military, and benefits, and some of the people that we have on who are helping our vets recoup and get back into the normalcy of life after they've served, and what they can do to help them get on the road to success again. But before I get to that, let me just do a little bit of homework here, a little bit of house cleaning, rather. I want to thank the Japanese Gardens of Miami, as well as the Elks Lodges of South Florida, for their continued support of this particular program. And we might have somebody else joining us on board before too long. Let me just introduce to you some of the guests that are joining us today, and they'll be coming on here shortly. Pat White, who is my main connection for this program, is a 20-year veteran, 16 years in the United States Marine Corps, 4 years in the Air Force. All right, Air Force. Pat is a special education teacher in the Philadelphia area for over 20 years. Probably she could have taught me, and because I always was in special ed. She's a songwriter, or author, rather. And her latest book is just out. It's Molly the Marine. I just found out it hasn't been just out, but oh, what the heck. And she's a contributor to VOW magazine. The editor-in-chief was supposed to be joining us today, but unfortunately she can't. But Janet can speak about that publication and how important it is for women in the military. Rodney White, he's the executive director, United States Marine Corps for 6 years. Rodney, started Salute to Service, 7 years as a veterans representative. His slogan, no veteran fights alone and leave no veteran behind. And Rodney joins us from his office. Janet Brennan, she is the, I believe, executive director for Shamrock Reigns. And it's a free equestrian therapy for vets. And their main program is Prevent 22, which I was very shocked about. Apparently every day, 22 veterans commit suicide, which is why they call Prevent 22. We'll talk about the relay that she puts together. So without further ado, could we please have my guests for today? There's Pat, there's Rodney, and there's Janet. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Pat wouldn't be the same without you. Before we go anywhere, Tommy, would you please put up that book, Molly the Marine? This is a fantastic book. Unfortunately, Molly doesn't join the Air Force in the end like Pat did after her time in the military. But please, where can people get the book?
It's available on Amazon.
Amazon? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So you go there. And periodically through the program, Tommy will be scrolling down here at the bottom of the screen, all the websites for all your different programs that you have, so people can get in touch with you and make contact with you. And again, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us here on Main Street. One thing that I wanted to bring out was, and I mentioned this to Pat and Rodney before the program, our current Miss America for 2024 is a second lieutenant in the United States Air Force. She's an Air Force Academy graduate, Madison March, and I believe she's an Air Force pilot, which makes me kind of happy, having flown in the Air Force myself. So that kind of makes me very, very happy. Janet, I would like to begin with you, if I may.
Sure.
I am so fascinated by this equestrian program that you have put together. And it's not that everybody else isn't important, but I am fascinated by this because I think this therapy is so welcomed and so needed, not only for disabled vets, but vets in general, because I've always believed that animals can get to the soul of a human being quicker than anything or anyone can, because there's something special about animals. And I saw a few pictures on your website of the horses, and they are cute as can be. Talk about your program, and we're going to run these. Here is Shamrock Reigns. Excuse me. I want to say something else. You can find all the information out, by the way, folks, on all of these websites. Contact information for Janet, for Rodney, for Pat, for the vowsmagazine.org. How did this program begin? and talk about the success rate and what you do with your program?
Sure. So I founded Shamrock Reigns February 10th in 2014. So we just had our 10-year anniversary. So horses are very unique as it relates to the military. There's a lot of similarities, with the exception that they're a 1,000-pound animal and on 4 legs. They are already hypervigilant because they're prey animals. They're herd animals, so you never see one horse run. There's always, they're always chasing each other, running after each other. They never leave anyone behind. Just like our military doesn't leave anyone behind. And so if you take a horse out of the pasture, you have to take their pasture mate out also. Otherwise, they will go absolutely crazy looking for them. So horses, the way that this really works is that horses mirror your emotions. So it's just like looking in the mirror. It's unlike any other animal in that service dogs or service animals, emotional support animals, therapy animals, they will help with different symptoms, and they will help calm and protect their veteran that they are dealing with. But horses, on the other hand, actually feel what you feel. So whatever you have going on inside of you, they pick up on the energy that's around you. So whatever you have going on inside of you, whatever emotions you might be blocking, trauma you might be blocking, they're going to sense it right away. And they're going to show you in their behavior what they're doing and what you're doing and how you're feeling. All our programs are designed to help the veterans develop healthy coping skills so that when they are away from Shamrock Reigns and they're in a challenging situation, they think about what they did with their horse to control their negative emotion. The programs actually help them process any trauma if they have any, or simply just reintegrate back into civilian life. As you know, being a veteran, the military and civilian life are entirely different scenarios, right? And different environments. And so what we have created is a safe haven. It's a calm, peaceful, safe, non-threatening, non-confrontational place to heal. We have 5 therapists. We have equine specialists. We have certified instructors. Everybody thinks as soon as they hear equine therapy, they think someone's going to come pet a horse and ride a horse. That's absolutely not what it is. We start, most veterans will start in equine assisted psychotherapy. So they work with a therapist, an equine specialist, and the horse. They come the same day, same time every week for an hour and a half. And then once they really have developed their coping skills and they've done some healing, then they can transition to therapeutic horsemanship, where we teach them everything about the horse. The important thing is that we really do have trackable statistics and measures. So since we were founded, we really started doing sessions in January of 2015. We have served over 850. We've done over 20,000 program session hours. We're open Monday through Saturday. We're doing up to about 25 sessions a day. Each year, we're enrolling anywhere from 115 to 120 new veterans. There is no cost. There never will be. And there's no limit to participation. We do baseline assessments where we're always assessing for suicide. We do a PTSD evaluation. We do anxiety, depression, drug and alcohol assessment. And then we do that again after 16 sessions. In 2023, 31 veterans at baseline reported that they have either attempted suicide or they have continual suicide ideations. After 16 sessions or less, 29 of them reported no after that.
Wow.
So these horses are saving lives. In their PTSD assessments that may be well off of the charts, very, very high when they come in, 16 sessions or less, 80% improvement. Before and after.
How do the families get incorporated into this training?
So most of the sessions that we have are private sessions. There can also be some group sessions. We do have some specialty workshops that are also done in groups. Family participation relates to the effect of the service on the family unit. So it's helpful that once a veteran has been coming, if their family is, a lot of our veterans live alone and actually don't have a family. And
Really?
so we have some very set policies that once they join and enroll in the program, they sign a participant policy that we confirm their session every week, and they know that if they do not reply to us by 3:00 the day before their session, and we've tried to reach them, we're calling their emergency contact. And if we can't get their emergency contact, we are sending a wellness check to their house, because no one is hurting themselves on our watch. So we are
That's so
staying
cool.
in constant touch with them through the week.
That is so cool, Janet. That really, really is so cool. Rodney, let's move over there to where you are. You have been in the past. You were an advocate for veterans. You served in the Marine Corps yourself, along with Pat. Janet, I don't think you served in the military. Did you?
No,
not?
I'm the daughter of a Vietnam veteran and retired Philadelphia fireman. So that's my military. My first career is as an ER trauma nurse. So I certainly have experience.
When I was at the University of Miami, I dated a trauma nurse for a while, and then about 15 years later, she was out of it completely. She said, "Oh, you get burned out so fast."
Yeah,
It's just something. But I'm originally Janet didn't hear this, but I'm originally from Wilkes-Barre.
Oh, okay.
So I'm a big Philadelphia Philly fan, and they lost again this weekend, and I'm not too happy about that.
I know.
Not too happy about that. Rodney, let's talk a little bit about some of the things, and in general, with all of you, about what's going on with veterans in general today. What are you hearing out there, Pat, Rodney, Janet, from veterans about the atmosphere that's going on in the military today? I know that when I served in the early 70s during Vietnam, there was the Old Boy Network. And there weren't a lot of women in the military when I served. Now, that's certainly changed a lot. The women that are pilots now, I think they're with the Blue Angels and the Thunderbirds. I think the Thunderbirds are certainly better than the Blue Angels, but that's just my opinion. But is the Old Boy Network still working against some of the women and even some of the men? Because I'm going to use this as an illustration. I'm Jewish, right? I know a lot of self-hating Jews. I know a lot of men in the military, and Rodney, you probably can speak to this as well. Janet or Pat, you can too. People in charge who shouldn't be in charge, who hold people back, bad reviews, bad this, treat them horribly. And I know men have always treated women horribly in the military. I don't know why. You ladies are a lot smarter than we'll ever be. That's for darn sure. But is that still going on, still prevalent? And race, is it still a problem for people in the military?
Yes. I can't speak to so much about what they're going through today, but I can speak about what I went through. And
Sure.
It hasn't changed. Going back to my history here, I was in the Marine Corps and the Army. I got out of the Marine Corps in 1974.
Okay.
I was out for a long while. I wanted to take a vacation. All the resorts were booked, so I joined the Army. So I have 2 years active in the Marine Corps and 6 in the Army.
Okay.
And my unit in the Army, I was with the 103rd Engineer Battalion. None of the blacks got promoted. And I was very far in between that promotions were given. So that was a race problem there in itself. And I don't have to explain. I really don't have to say too much about what's going on as far as race-wise, because you guys can see it, whether you feel it or not, but you can see it.
Sure.
And it's still prevalent in the military. And what's even worse is females, white or black, they still have a hard time in the military, okay? Because you have senior officers and people over them, that kind of put pressure on them to do things, so to speak,
Yeah.
We have a program that we're starting at Salute to Service. I really haven't rolled it out yet, but it's called SIS, like sister.
Mm-hmm.
The acronym is Suffering in Silence. Okay. So we want to get a lot of women to come forward and talk about some of their experiences. We're going to have a roundtable discussion coming up soon. I'll let everybody know about that moving forward.
Okay.
But
Okay.
yeah, it's still, there's still a lot of disparities going on within the military.
Yeah. When I was in, there was very few women that were in the military, and if they were in clerical positions or they were nurses. We had a lot of nurses in Pleiku, but basically no frontline. I don't think any female became frontline, Pat, until what, the middle 80s, maybe, or the 90s.
Mhm.
And they certainly weren't flying off of carriers like they do today, or they weren't flying fighters like the F-16 or the 22 Raptor or any of the other stuff. Tommy, please put up continue to put up the websites for all these folks, please. salutetoservice.org. You can find out all the information you can about Rodney's organization. They all need volunteers, folks. They all need volunteers. So please don't ignore being a volunteer and helping our vets. They were there for us when we needed, and I'm a vet, but they were there for us from World War II right on. And if you don't think that women have not been important in the military or veterans in general, let me just say this. I have this card in front of me, and I've been preparing it. In World War II, we had the WASPs and the WAVs, the Women's Air Force Service pilots flying airplanes from A to B, so our men could fight in the front lines. We also happen to have right now, as I said, the Miss America. She's a second lieutenant. We also happen to have some of the finest female pilots ever that served in the Army Air Corps during the Second World War. Rosie the Riveter, you name it. And there were men that stayed behind who couldn't qualify for the military during World War II. So everybody contributed during World War II, especially women. So I don't know why officers, when women started to be enlisting in the military, or why they were being held back and why they couldn't do this and they couldn't do that. I still can't figure that out. Now, my father's of the World War II generation, and the first pilot that came online with Eastern Airlines, who was a female, he almost threatened to leave the airline because he said they don't belong up front, they belong in the back. And my mother and him went around and around and around. She didn't speak to him for months. But Pat, what was it like for you? You were a Marine and then you were in the Air Force. What was the climate like from the Marine Corps to the Air Force as far as women were concerned?
Well, I was lucky. I worked with a lot of good people, but it was definitely, people let it be known that they didn't want you to be there. And in the Marines, especially when I was in, there were hardly any Marines, females.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I've been held back for rank. And my husband, he was in the Marines. He served for 27 years. And he always used to wear a shirt or a hat that said Marines, and people were always coming up to him, Semper Fi, thank you. If I wear something that says Marines, 9 out of 10 times, and whether it's a man or a woman, they'll ask me, who do I know that's a Marine?
Yeah. Yeah. Pat is, as I said, she's a contributing writer to avowmagazine.org. Please take a look at their stuff. They really do some great stuff over there. It's a magazine that's written about women, for women, to women, you name it. It's very, very important. Where are things going in the military today, Rodney? I mean, you deal with vets. Pat, you deal with them, especially, and Janet, I know you do too. What are their complaints coming out as veterans? Is it the VA? Is it the lack of pay? Is it the lack of housing? Is it the lack of just being ignored?
All of the above. I'd say all of the above, Gary. There's still a lot of challenges that veterans face coming out of the military. They've made some strides, but there's still issues that's persistent in 2024, which is access to care, barriers to employment and education, transitioning, homeless and housing, and other social and cultural and policy hurdles that they have to jump over. There's still a lot that's not being done for our veterans. And I don't want to pinpoint one thing that causes a veteran to take his life, but these are some of the things that compound that, and it sends them to a dark place. After you serve 2, 4, 8, 16, 20, 30 years, only to come home to nothing,
Yeah. No, I know the feeling. When I came home, my mom and dad were there for me. My brother Mike was there for me. My other siblings were there for me. Where other people came home and they had problems, they had addiction problems, nightmares. Luckily, I was married to a young woman whose first husband was a platoon leader in Vietnam. So she helped me. Mm-hmm. She helped me get past an awful lot. And my cousin Tom, who was also in Vietnam as a helicopter pilot, he helped me get through a lot. My dad helped me get through a lot. but it's frightening when you have served and see the things that veterans see, and you come home and suddenly everybody expects you to, just because you have two eyes and two ears and two legs and two arms, that suddenly now you're supposed to acclimate yourself back into society. And the main area is right up here that you have the problems with. That's where the memory bank is. That's where all the issues are. And it seems like the people in Washington, and I don't generally get too political, but I am going to here, they don't care. They really don't care. This group of politicians that are in Washington now, they only care about one thing, their own individual power. And the guy who may be reelected president, he doesn't care about the military. He thinks we're a joke. He wouldn't even go to the cemetery when he was president for the veterans during the D-Day invasion. He wouldn't go there, or the American cemetery. He wouldn't go there because he was afraid to get his hair wet, and he thought we were a joke. The guy who was from South Carolina, the senator, he says D-Day was a losing proposition, and World War II we should have never been involved with. So how can you combat that, folks? I mean, talk to me. You guys deal with the veterans more often than I do. I'm a veteran, but I'm relatively okay. At least I think I am.
Well, as I mentioned before, the difficulties that they face to transitioning, even those that are wounded mentally, that's so much. That's the unseen disability.
Yes.
And you know how we went to boot camp. We were taught a way to live, a way to survive, a way to kill, but we were never retaught how to be a civilian again, which is another program we're starting at Salute to Service. It's called Reverse Boot Camp, where we retrain veterans to acclimate back into civilian society.
Yeah.
And actually getting to the root of some of the issues that they're facing is what we have to get down to. The government does what they do, but it's not enough. And it's only thanks to organizations such as Janet's and Salute to Service and what Pat is doing with her book that we got to come together and help veterans ourselves.
Yeah, and I know other organizations, the Elks, the American Legion, and other organizations throughout the country are doing the very level best that they can. And you can't blame the vets for being angry. I mean, how many vets do you three folks know or you've heard about that have waited for the VA to give them the go sign to go see a doctor, and they died while they were waiting?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I've seen plenty.
This is the greatest crime ever. We're called upon to serve. Then when it's their turn to help us, I'm sorry, I got a budget problem. I got to build a new road into my girlfriend's house or something, and can't have the money. I mean, it's pathetic.
So much of a lot of times what we're doing, even in our sessions, is helping the veterans deal with the VA and dealing with getting their disability ratings. And so it's a little bit hit or miss. You have some veterans that have a very good experience, and then you have others that don't have a good experience. And I agree with you. It's completely inexcusable. There's no explanation, but that's exactly why all of us exist. That's exactly why there's all of the community organizations, because the government alone is not able to do it. It'd be helpful if they made it a little easier for us to operate, but we're going to keep doing this because what we all do has value and it works.
You said something that was interesting that I brought up before the program, before you joined us. VA ratings. Rodney and I and Pat talked about it. Is there such a thing as disability or VA ratings to get medical care?
To get disability benefits. Yeah. So they could be 100%, they could be 30%, they could be 40%, and then from that they will get a disability rating.
Okay,
They get monetary. It's associated with a monetary pay.
Yeah,
I meant as far as getting in to see somebody like a doctor.
No,
is there a certain rating?
No, you can go see a doctor.
Yeah, they can go see anyone.
But if you have a rating of 10 or more, see, I'm 100% service-connected disabled with the military, so I get full. I get the red carpet laid out for me. But there are veterans that are 10%. They have to pay a copay. I don't pay anything for any medication or anything that I need. But
Mhm.
if you don't have a certain level of a degree of a percentage of disability, that depends on the care that you're going to get.
Yeah.
Now, there is a caveat to that as well. Veterans say a veteran comes out, he wants to go down to VA and see if he's eligible for services. They give you what's called a means test. So if you make too much money, you won't be eligible.
Ugh.
Okay. Any veteran that served, took that oath, okay, they should be eligible for services at the VA at full benefits.
Yes.
Yeah. But that's
Yes.
not the case. Yeah, that's not the case.
My dad was 10% forever. Finally, when I got him 100% disability, because again, he fought in the Pacific as a Marine Corps fighter pilot. He died before we could even see anything. I'm not on any benefits. I have broken legs that I got when I was shot down, and et cetera, et cetera. And the VA keeps saying, well, prove it. It's not in your military records. Prove it. Do you have proof of it?
Do you
And
have a
it's like,
claim in, Gary? Do you have a claim
no,
in?
I did years ago. I don't anymore. I gave
Okay.
up. I just,
As a
I just
sidebar, call my office, please. Call my office, okay?
I will. I will. But I've tried like the Dickens. Pat, what do you hear from families, of veterans and Janet and Rodney? What do you hear from families of veterans that are overseas? I don't care if it's a man or a woman in the military. The housing conditions in this country are horrible. The benefits they're on food stamps. A lot of these families. You have housing which is dilapidated, it's falling apart, and the government doesn't seem to want to do anything to I mean, you'll see every once in a while if a senator is running for office again, oh, we'll do something about it. But what are you hearing from families about that they're on food stamps, the housing they have is poor, plus how often do they get transferred nowadays? Back when I was in the Air Force, somebody would be at a base for maybe 3 years and then they're transferred again. Then they'd be at that base for 3 years and they get transferred again. I mean, what are you hearing, Pat?
It was 3 years when I was in. They would stay typically 3 years before they moved to another base.
Yeah.
But especially the lower ranks, they had to get assistance to help pay the bills.
Is that still going on today? It's got to be.
Yeah.
Rodney?
Yes, veterans are struggling. Pat can tell you, I feed veterans every Wednesday at my office. We give away free groceries to veterans and
Yes,
families.
you do. Yes,
Okay?
you do.
Our pantry is open every day for any veteran and a community member, right? We also provide food to the Willow Grove Air Base. And we were also providing food for Fort Dix, McGuire, providing food because these men and women don't have enough money to support their families. These are active duty members, Gary. These are members that are actively serving now. They don't have enough money for groceries, for food, for the basic necessities.
Yeah. What was it just a couple of months ago? A certain senator was holding back promotions and ranks because he didn't like the abortion bill that was before that's on the military books or something. How in the name of God can people want to? You can't blame people for not wanting to join the military. When they hear and see all of this, they go, "Wait a minute! I can do better in civilian life working at Burger King."
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's ridiculous. Janet, what are you hearing from some of the families of the veterans that you're dealing with?
So mostly a lot of their frustration and their grief is just over the suffering, that many of these veterans are dealing with. There's definitely physical and chemical changes that occur in the brain. And it's one day they seem to be okay, the next day they're not. And the frustration of how hard they have to fight to get any benefit. That is the case. We've had a couple active duty, and I believe it's every 2 years now. It might depend on the branch, but for the most part, I know Navy and the Marines, they're stationed, and every 2 years they shift. And I keep hearing that a lot of the conditions of many of them tried to live off base, like not because the conditions are, so poor.
Yeah.
So, I don't hear too many people saying all of those things are wonderful. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. I lived off base. I was based at Andrews, and I lived off base, and I found that more desirable than I would have living in a barracks. I mean, I grew up with 9 siblings, so I wanted my freedom. I didn't want to be around too many people. Pat, um, more and more women have been joining the military for the last 35 years. More and more women are taking an active role in all sorts of parts of the military, whether it be as ranking officers down to enlisted personnel, from pilots to generals to fleet uh, uh, officers. I don't know the ranks in the Navy. I honestly don't. You probably do better than I do. But more and more women are joining the military. What are you hearing from them as far as what's going on? Are they enjoying their time in the military? Are these women that have their whole lives have been wanting the military, or is there an ulterior motive? I'm going to go in the military. I'm going to learn how to do this, and then I'm going to come out in civilian life and do that.
I don't know too many who are actively serving right now, but when I went in and all the women that I served with, I mean, for the majority of the part, we're very glad we did it. I am so glad I did it. I'm so glad I stuck it out for 20 years and got that pension. That's a huge thing for women. I, as a teacher and especially as a woman, I would tell people that, especially as a woman, you have to be able to take care of yourself because anything could happen. And that was, after I joined, I enlisted for 6 years to get the GI Bill. And I really liked it and I re-enlisted. And then I knew at a certain point, I knew I was going to stay for 20 years and I was getting my second pension.
I should have. We are very honored to have former members of the military joining us today on Main Street. Pat White, Rodney Witt, Wyatt. Excuse me, Wyatt.
Yeah.
I should know that pretty well. My buddy played Wyatt Earp. And Janet Brand, and I am Gary Allen, your host here on Main Street. We're going to have these people back, plus someone who is supposed to be joining us. She will probably join us at some point down the road in about another month or so. And we're talking about veterans, women in the military, the conditions for the veterans in the military, whether they're active duty or whether they've been separated from the military, and treatment and help for the veterans who are suffering, who are going through horrible, horrible times in their lives. Janet, I want to talk to you about Prevent 22. This is an interesting program. I did not know that 22 veterans a day, is it? Or is it a
Yes.
month?
A day.
Suicide. Commit suicide.
And I venture to say that the rate is probably higher. They keep trying to report that it's lower, but there's so much that isn't reported. If you go into a local community hospital, they don't even ask if you're a veteran. I mean, it's a simple question to ask so that if anything is wrong, they can notify the VA or, just understand veterans have different challenges and they do need to be treated differently. You have to be alert to that when they show up for medical care or if they're in a crisis situation. So I think that the rate is a lot higher, but this is, it's 22 a day and this is veterans. That doesn't even count active duty. The active duty is not in there. So fundraising is a challenging thing for any nonprofit. And we were looking for probably the best way that we could get more active enrollment, more active participation in fundraising, and also yield a higher amount of funds versus and not have to put a ton of energy out to do it, because we all need assistance, and it takes not trying to it takes an army to do all of this. It takes a lot. So we started last year with what we call Relay to Prevent 22. The main goal of this is for the teams to actually compete to be the highest fundraising team. So they're teams of 2 to 12 members. They will compete to complete 22 miles. So they can, you could have one team member who only does 1 mile and somebody else does 5 miles, but collectively as a team, they complete 22 miles and they raised funds to do that. So the primary goal is not the timing of how fast the team completes it, but a first, second, and third place for the highest fundraisers. And it really is also to raise awareness that equine therapy is saving lives. And,
Yes.
It's to raise the funds for us to be able to continue to provide the no-cost service and to serve and help as many veterans as we possibly can.
As I said before, I have found in my own life I have a cat here. I've had cats all my life.
Hmm.
They are so wonderful. I mean, and dogs are wonderful too. I mean, the
Hmm.
only thing I can possibly think that wouldn't be wonderful would be a reptile. But we won't talk about my ex mother-in-law.
Oh,
But
geez.
oh, listen, she was yeah, she was something else. But her daughter was one of the loveliest people I ever knew in my life. Rodney, let's talk about some of the career guidance that you give your people that come to see you, your veterans. Talk about some of the career guidance you give and how you're helping the homeless.
We have different programs in place for that. We do homeless outreach where we go out to actually go out to the homeless camps and
Mhm.
provide services and resources to veterans. And we also speak to everybody out there. We don't just go out there and if it's say 20 people out there, there's only 2 veterans. We provide food and sustenance for everybody. But we take veterans to a different program there. We invite them into the office so we can do a veterans benefit analysis, first of all, find out what services that they're eligible for. And we take care of the immediate need is to find them a temporary to permanent housing. Okay. We have a wellness program that we started at Salute to Service. And we just help them try to find out exact the nature of what they're going to need. Okay, we try to take care of the immediate need first of all, and
Yeah.
a lot of them want to put claims in. A lot of them have lost their documents, their military records, so we can help access that. We access those records for them. A
Yeah.
lot of them come in. I got a veteran that came in. He wanted to access his medals. He lost a lot of his medals, so we helped him get that. So it's a lot of services that we provide at Salute to Service to help veterans out, and we help them with job placement. We help them with their resumes. But it's a daunting task to try to help them to get a veteran to realize that you got to speak in civilian language. You can't put down there what you did in military occupation because it gets lost in translation. You know,
Oh,
most of
absolutely.
these
Oh,
men and women,
absolutely.
yeah, as you know, most of these men and women have managerial skills. Okay, they've oversaw 5, 10 to 100 people. Okay, they've had equipment in excess of millions of dollars at their disposal. So they
Yep.
have every attribute that a employer would need, but we just help them to translate it better so the employer can, see what he's getting.
That's the problem. You talk to young people today, or you talk to people that are in their 30s, 20s that are in management that have just come out of college. They don't understand vets because they're not military trained. They don't understand what a vet goes through. I've honestly said for a lot of years that I think this country should demand, and I mean demand like Israel does, everybody, providing physically you and mentally can do it, serve 2 years in the military.
Yeah,
I really do. I think you learn a great deal from it. Yeah, there's
you
going to be
will.
some misfits along the way, but I
Yeah,
think you learn more from it than you do not learn anything. If you were, because some of these kids today have no discipline at all. They didn't get it from their parents, and this might be a good place for them to get it.
there's no structure. There's no foundation there. I went into the military when I was 17, so I can tell you now it was the best thing that I ever did. You know, it taught
Yeah,
me a lot.
I went in. I was just turned 18. Well, no, I was going to turn 18, so we had to wait until I turned 18 before they sent me off to Lackland, which they did in November. And Pat, you remember Lackland, that very nice, warm, beautiful place? It was so cold. Oh my God. I don't know why people live in Texas. I still can't figure that out. I mean, that is one of the coldest places well, no, Greenland was one of the coldest places I was ever at. Um, talk about
Gary, can I just make a comment? You had asked, what are most of the veterans, both female veterans and otherwise,
Sure.
saying? And so
Sure.
we have about 40% of our population that come to Shamrock Reigns are female veterans.
Mhm.
I can tell you that there is not one of our participants that has ever said that they were sorry they joined the military. They
Yeah.
all are very proud and they would do it all over again, despite all of the challenges that they have. And that is really something that we should all honor and respect because it
Yeah.
is humbling and it is
Yes.
very
Yeah.
amazing.
We should, Janet. We really should. Unfortunately, we don't. if there's no active war going on, the veterans are forgotten about. I had heard this, Rodney and Janet and Pat, maybe you can confirm it or whatever, but the farther you are away from your separation date, the less help you get from the VA to begin with. Is any truth to that, Rodney?
You mean before you transition out?
Well, no. In other words, I transitioned out in 1977.
Right.
I spent my 6 years in, and I was originally only supposed to be 4, but the Air Force, yes. But I was out in 77. But the farther you're away from your transition date that you get out, the less, as time goes on, does the VA want to do much for you?
I wouldn't say that's a fact. No.
Yeah, no.
No.
I know a lot of Vietnam veterans that never went. Part of the issue is that so many of the veterans don't go for their services. And
That's
so
it.
because they also don't know, right, Rodney? They don't know what's available to them.
Exactly.
You keep hearing that over and over again. But I know a lot of Vietnam veterans that are going and getting benefits now, and they're actually getting them quicker than usual because they are Vietnam vets, and the time, they're losing time.
Yeah, I mean, it depends, I think, too. I know this for a fact, that if you're a combat veteran, that's one thing. If you were in Vietnam but you weren't in combat, that's another story altogether. If you're a combat veteran, there's a little more benefits coming your way than there would be if you were just in country and you didn't serve in combat. Although I think anybody that served in Vietnam should get a Medal of Honor just surviving Vietnam. I mean, if you've ever been to Vietnam, it was no fun. It was no fun by any stretch of the imagination. What do you think you would like to see improved? One or two things, Janet. Let's start with you for military veterans.
Well, it's kind of hard. Because the list is so long on so many things that they need. But I think to have the right people involved in the VA that are veterans and that acknowledge and understand and not put more stress on each of the veterans just to get the services that they deserve. I mean, I think, and to provide help for all of the community organizations like all of ours in attempting to help them out, to help out the government in being able to provide the services that are needed.
Yeah. The unfortunate thing is I think the government doesn't listen so well.
That's a given.
I mean, I think they go deaf, when it comes to certain things. They sit there and you get senators and congressmen, like I said, who have never served a second in the military, nor did they ever want to. They only have desired to have power. So it's kind of difficult. Rodney, what would you like to change for vets, either currently serving or veterans who have separated from the military?
I would like to see the pay scale go up for veterans. The average veteran is only making $40,000 a year when he goes in. That's $19 an hour. Okay. For an individual that's volunteering to defend this nation. Okay. That's got to change. And the BAH, they got to increase all these things here. The basic housing allowance. Okay. The money has to come out and go to these veterans that are serving, and they have to give the money to to those that have served already. There's billions and billions of dollars there that the VA has. Okay. And it's not going to the veterans, and it's not going to the active military, as we can see for ourselves there,
Oh, no. Oh, absolutely. Pat, how about you?
Veterans shouldn't have to fight for their benefits. A lot of us gave 4, 6, 20 years of our lives, and it's a struggle. Like you said, you gave up. People just give up because it's a fight. It's a struggle. It's almost like a different job, and they don't know where to go to get help.
Yeah.
So they don't get what they deserve.
It's almost like when you retire at 65. Social Security doesn't hand you a book and say, okay, this is what you're entitled to. You find people that are already 70 that still don't know what benefits they're entitled to. This government is very weak when it comes to information to help other people with their benefits of whatever it may be, whether it's Social Security or veterans benefits or whatever the case may be. I know that when it came to my educational benefits, I didn't have too many problems there. I mean, the University of Miami helped me out a great deal. Of course, I went to GW first in Washington, D.C. Then I transferred down to the U, my favorite university in the whole wide world. Although Temple's not bad, guys. I know you're in Philadelphia. Temple's not bad, But hey, listen, as I said to Janet, I'm a Philadelphia Philly baseball fan inside out, and a gentleman who I worked for in Vegas and opened for him for years was Bobby Rydell, who was a dear friend of mine.
Wow.
Bobby was a sweet friend to me. All those years, he'd come on my shows. We talk about the Phillies and everything else that were involved. Now, I'm not an Eagles fan because my brother played for the Baltimore Colts, but nevertheless, and hopefully my Celtics will win tonight. So, it's eclectic, folks. It's eclectic when you got a family like mine. Now, now my dad served in the Marine Corps. He was a fighter pilot. My two uncles were bomber pilots in Europe on B-24s and B-17s. As a matter of fact, my uncle Jim was in Jimmy Stewart's squadron in the 8th Air Force. Never really talked to him much, but he said he was a real nice guy. He flew B-24s. The guys from World War II seem to be getting taken care of. Do you think that because of the influx of so many veterans from Vietnam, that's what has really stymied the VA, that there's just so many veterans in comparison to what it might have been during World War II or after World War II, that's what it is, and that we just have generally incompetent people running the VA?
I'd say that's a combination of both. They always say that there's a shortage, of personnel. Hire more personnel. You have the money there. Okay, these veterans shouldn't have to wait till they're almost dead before they can receive their benefit.
Yeah.
I had a veteran. I do claims myself. I had a veteran, and we did his claim for him. And in my office, we got this man back $119,000. He didn't live. Wow. He didn't live 3 years to take advantage of it.
Wow.
But this is the case here. It's like they wait for us to die.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or hoping that we die.
Hoping that we
don't. Yeah. Yeah. So
Gary,
they can give.
They didn't expect us to live this long. That's what it is.
Well, that's true. I mean, if you really think about it, because of modern medicine and things along those lines, things that would ordinarily probably have. I'm 71 years old. The only thing I have is glaucoma, and that's bad enough. But other than that, the rest of me is pretty good, I think. But yeah, they didn't expect this. I mean, I guess that's why Social Security was set at 65, because people didn't live much beyond 65. I guess maybe to 70 back when this was all put together after the Second World War.
Yeah.
And now we're living into our 80s, 90s, even 100 years old. I mean, I saw something online the other day where some vets are over 100 years old from World War II. Mm-hmm. Some of the code talkers are still with us. Yeah. God bless those Native Americans. You talk about a people who have been really screwed, pardon my French, but the Native Americans. And they served our country with dignity, with honor. They considered it a privilege to wear the uniform, whatever branch of the military they were in. I mean, it's the most wonderful experience you can have next to going to college is serving in the military. Now, Vietnam was not much fun, but other than that, in the Air Force, I had a great time. I met a lot of wonderful people along the way. I got to travel on Air Force One for 2.5 years, 3 years. I got to meet people that I would probably have never met before in my life or would never meet again. I mean, it is a wonderful career, but God Almighty, when are they going to wake up and start paying the service personnel, the families, the medical care, everything? When is this country going to wake up and realize this is the most valuable resource we have next to children growing up? When? That's my argument. Yeah. Sorry, I keep getting on my soapbox, but this is a subject that's so close to me. Veterans, if I wasn't one, I still love veterans because of my family and the dedication that they gave. And I had 2 family members that were in the Marine Corps. So Pat, we're not too far from you, and Rodney, not too far from you. There is so many other things. I'm just going to leave the floor to you, and you can talk about whatever you want at this point, and just whatever comes to mind, just bring it up. Pat, you want to begin this? Talk about the magazine and how important it is for women in the military for a VOW magazine.
Sure. I met Sheila, who couldn't be on today, back in September of 2019. Pennsylvania had their first all-female honor flight. And I met Sheila there, who was also a veteran. She's an Air Force veteran, but she and Christina started the magazine, and it stands for American Veteran Organization of Women. It's a magazine written by female veterans for female veterans.
And you're a contributor to the magazine.
I am. I am. And when we do the articles and advertise things, it's always for female veterans owned things that run the companies. I did an article on Janet last year.
How are women acclimating themselves from military life to civilian life nowadays? Because it's got to be interesting for employers to suddenly have in front of them a captain in the United States Navy, for instance, which is equal to that of a major in the Air Force or the Army, who's probably had more responsibility than the young person interviewing them. I mean, that has got to be like, a slap in the face. For the young lady who's the Miss America, Madison Moore, a second lieutenant and an academy graduate. I mean, that's unbelievable. I mean, it's not unbelievable. It's great. But what is it? What are they facing when they're coming out now? What are you hearing?
Well, I know when I was also a special education teacher, and then I was also in the reserves. And being a teacher, when you find out where you're going for your 2 weeks. If you're in the reserves, you go away for 2 weeks every year. Well, these decisions are made in Washington years before, and you just find out where you're going and when you're going, and you show up. So then when you tell the principal, the school district, well, they think, well, no, you had awful summer. You can do whatever you need to do in the summer.
Yeah.
I was the one making the decisions.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, are they finding it easier to acclimate themselves into civilian life after the military? Now, I know pilots are a little bit different than, say, people who are working the flight line or air traffic controllers, which they need plenty of, or something else like that. And that's another thing. I don't think the pilots are supposedly they're not coming out of the military, even though the airlines are dying for them. But are they finding it easier to acclimate themselves to civilian life in comparison to other times?
I guess it depends on the job too, but even in the civilian life, I would just find that they're less organized. They don't follow the rules. Not like the military.
Yeah.
You're told to do something, you do it.
Yeah. I imagine it probably takes, they're probably a little rigid in comparison to the civilian who's never served in the military. It's like, what's wrong with this person, And I always say if they served in the military, it's going to take them a while to acclimate themselves into it altogether. Rodney, what would you like to talk about in the remaining few minutes?
That America needs to wake up and recognize that these men and women that have served our country deserve better. Okay, they deserve better than what they're getting. Okay, and I think that between organizations like ours, we can make that voice count. Because I always tell people I would like to be out of business. Okay, because I know if I'm out of business, that means veterans don't need us no more. But that's not going to happen for a long time. Okay, we got to start going to our elected officials and knocking on their doors and letting them know what's going on with these veterans, what's happening. Okay.
Yeah.
Pat will tell you the line that comes to my office every Wednesday. We have to get traffic control now because the line goes all the way out to Chandler Hall entrance down there now, Pat.
Really?
We have 40, 50, 60 cars coming in for groceries and coming in for food.
Wow.
And these are our veterans that have served this country, proudly. Now they have to go to lines to get food. And it's got to get better here, okay? We got to start knocking on these politicians' door and making them pass these bills that's going to assist these men and women that have served the country.
We need veterans to storm the Capitol, but not like January 6th. To get these benefits and get it through the noggins of these idiots up there. And there are some senators and congressmen who did serve in the military, but I guess amnesia sets in as soon as they're away from it after a period of time. Janet, what would you like to say with the remaining minutes?
I kind of just to sort of echo what everybody else has said, but to remember that not only these are still human beings, they're human beings that have struggles because of what they did for our country. And even if they don't have PTSD or traumatic brain injury or any other disability, it is a challenge to assimilate. I mean, I know of many high level Navy guys that are involved in, supply chain. You would think that would be an easy position to get. And it's almost like there's a little bit of of a stigma in that they should welcome a military person and hire them, but they don't. And I don't think that we should be sweeping under the carpet the fact that there are still very much daily challenges, and that healing isn't all done, one and done, and we're okay now and we can go back. It just takes one simple thing to trigger everything all over again. And there needs to be a bit more empathy and compassion for our veterans.
Oh, absolutely. As I said before, when veterans come back from the war, or whether they served in a war, they look at it, the people go, oh, 2 eyes, 2 legs, 2 arms. Oh, they look the same as when they left. No, they're not the same.
Wounds. Yeah. No, they're not.
No, it's like I used to always say to my dad until I served, why don't you and Uncle so-and-so talk about the war and all this other stuff? Even when I loved flying, and that was where I wanted to end up instead of being a talk show host. Why don't you talk about the war? And then I finally realized after being in one, why you don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Because nobody could understand about it unless you were there. Anyway, I just want to thank all of you so much. Pat White, Rodney Wyatt, Jackie Brennan, thank you so very much for taking the time out of your day to join us here on Main Street. I want to have all of you back, and I'll call Pat. And if you promise to come back, and I know you made a promise that you would make sure all your friends and everything find out about this show, it's important to me. And if Sheila can join us next time, Pat, that would be wonderful. That really would be wonderful. I'd love to get one of the Thunderbirds on. I know one of the ladies that I see it all the time, and the Blue Angels have a couple of ladies who are officers, which is kind of cool. But I want to thank you so much for joining us, all 3 of you. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. And I just want to say to all of you out there, thank you for joining us here on Main Street. It's Gary Allen with you. And until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.